Hello, and welcome to our series, Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. I'm Russell Robinson, Chief Executive Officer of Jewish National Fund USA. The time has come to be the voice of what Zionism really is. We're exposing the beautiful and diverse facets and facts of Zionism. Join me on this journey, together with Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. This is Zionism. With me today is retired colonel with the Israel Defense Forces, Miri Eisin. After her service with the IDF in the Israeli Intelligence Service, she now teaches at Reichman University. She works extensively with the media, student groups, and diplomats, and has become one of Israel's top presenters on geopolitics and security. Please welcome Miri Eisin. Miri, welcome to ZTV, to our Zionist studios. It is great to have you here. You're a wealth of information. I'm going to, just for our audience, you're usually questions about security, about nuclear, about terrorism. Well, we're going to talk about that, but in a different way. The battles that we're facing, but the battles that we're facing within and the battles we're facing without colleges and high schools, the diaspora in Israel, the word Zionism, and how we have to look at ourselves and understand some of the realities in Israel. And as the first most highest ranking woman officer in the IDF and one of the specialists that speak around the world, I'm going to ask you a question, kind of lead into it. Women, the IDF, Zionism, tell us about that journey and about how you see it.
Well, first of all, for the audience who doesn't know, I was born in the States. Most Israeli high-ranking officers don't have English the way I have. And I think in that sense that my parents making Aliyah, moving to Israel, that's Zionism. My having been drafted into the IDF after I'd already lived here for 9 years, that's a different aspect, having the draft, how that impacts Israel. And the fact that from the day that the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, was established, it was equal for men and women. It wasn't equal, Russell, but it was as if equal, is also part of Zionism, that idea that both men and women and all of us have a place inside the Zionist world. It, of course, isn't as simple as that, but I do think that at the core heart, that's where we're trying to go to.
And so you're reading a lot, Miri, most recently about women who have, and I take you as that role model, that are now becoming those combat leaders. They're becoming in the Air Force and in the pilots. How do you see women, the treatment of women in Israel? Because people always question about Zionism in Israel as this racist country. It's not equal. And we've kind of waved that flag, but how do you see it?
I think that Israel is a multicultural, very multifaceted country, meaning you have lots of liberals, just like other places, who see not just equal opportunity, but equality as being where they want to go to. And you have more conservative, more paternal types. We have everything here. When it comes to the IDF specifically, the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, have gone through a journey where literally the only country in the world that fully drafts women. When you're drafting 18-year-olds, men and women, and at the upfront, you're not having equal opportunities, that's one of the things that has changed in Israel. And I'd even say that the IDF is a trendsetter, and within Zionism, and that idea is that women can do anything, that women can be not just, it's equal opportunity, both within the military, and it immediately impacts the rest of the public sphere. Because in Israel, the military is kind of like an equal opportunity. The sky is the limit. You can go the whole way, including men, women, different backgrounds, for that matter, LGBTQ. Everything is out there inside the IDF. And as soon as you open that door and you climb up those ranks, it opens the door in Israel. So in that sense, it's an equalizer. And that's not the way you usually think of the IDF.
So you who were serving as a major person in the intelligence community, and now serving in one of the major universities in Israel, when you're talking to audiences, or not audiences, when you're talking to individuals, when you were in the Prime Minister's office and dealing with counterparts, and it's not the negotiation of A, B, or C, but you're just talking about our nation of Israel. How does that play out? And what are some of the scenarios that you found that were interesting that people just didn't know about this place called Israel?
So when I think of Israel, and I think, Russell, really for me, it's because my parents immigrated from the United States and we came from the West Coast and we came from a very liberal community. And we certainly define ourselves here as liberal Jews inside Israel. That when you talk to people about Israel, there's two different things that come up very strongly. One is when you say Zionism, that's like the bad word. And when you say Jewish, that's perceived as something more general. And it's interesting that inside Israel itself, the Jewish aspect of Israel has a lot of different facets that are very different from North America. And the Zionist aspect today has become something very central, both within politics and defining who we are in our self-determination. And I think that perhaps the point in that sense is that we view the terms in vastly different ways. Inside Israel, when you say Zionism, you're talking about the construction of the state of Israel as it is now and where you want it to go to. And when you say Zionism worldwide, you're talking about the basic legitimacy of Israel being allowed to be, in its own way, the self-determination state of the Jewish people. So it's two different conversations when you're talking with journalists who are stationed here, or if you're talking within a domestic Israeli audience.
Well, you know what, and that's what I want to work with you, because you are such a great strategist and informed, and you come from the United States. You're living in Israel. You've been in the military, been in the government. You're in academia. What are some pathways in that conversation that we need to build? We need to build amongst us Americans, Israeli diaspora, Israel, on this Zionism, on coming together. What are some of the conversations, and how should we be building it?
That's called like a big question. I'm going to break it down into perhaps, smaller portions. When I'm talking to Israelis in their 20s, and I want to talk about them with Zionism, I want them to define how they view that term today in 2022. I don't want a history lesson, because Zionism in the 19th century, Zionism of the 20th century were in 2022. You need to look at that term and understand for yourself what that means today. And I think that that's true, not just in the conversation of the young gen here in Israel, the adults here in Israel, the ones who are going to be the next leaders. I think that's true also, certainly in the largest Jewish diaspora in North America. So that would be the first point I put forward. The second point that I would put forward about this talking about Zionism is that I want to own the term. I'm not going to let you, Russell, define for me what it means. And I don't think that you, even as JNF, define it for anybody else. I think it is a definition that a person has to actually dig in and say, what does it mean to me having a country that defines itself through its Jewishness in self-determination? And you can't do that based on the anti-Semitism and immigrations of the 19th century. You cannot do that, Russell, based on the horrific events of the mid 20th century. You have to look at it today in the 21st century, looking at it forward. And in that, I'm going to connect to the way that the Jewish National Fund or the way that other organizations look at developing this modern day state. But this state is not just about Jewish. Zionism and that creation of a Jewish entity, a Jewish self-determination in Israel is more complex, because in the reality of Israel being a modern democracy, 25% of our population is not Jewish. It is how we treat our minorities. That's part of our Jewishness. It is how we look at absolute equal rights, and for that sense, equal opportunities in a country that isn't just defined through its Jewishness. And the third and last point that I'll make is in looking at Jewishness within Zionism, because I am open to having a real conversation, a nuanced conversation with people who are against the idea of Zionism. But I think that most people are not capable about a nuanced conversation on that. And most people immediately go between anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism. The line is crossed all the time. I don't think that it was given in the Ten Commandments that there should be a Jewish state in Eretz Israel. I don't. It wasn't in the 10, okay? There were other things in the 10 Commandments. And this modern state does need to reinvent itself every time through that idea of what it means to be Zionist. Was that too much? I like went all over.
No. So Zionism is a conversation that it has a lot of conflicting parts to it, but one of the non-confrontational parts is that it is about a nation of a Jewish people. We could discuss whether it's supposed to be in that piece of land or not, but it is about ancestral soil in the sense of our nation. And then the complexities is you talk about 25% is not Jewish in Israel, which is not a conflicting part of what Zionism is. Is that correct?
I certainly agree that Zionism includes within it the ability to absolutely not just acknowledge the other and acknowledge all of our portions within society. The idea is that there should be one country where your Jewishness is actually not the issue, because the country itself lives by a Jewish calendar, speaks the Hebrew language in an amazing way, and absolutely, Russell, for me, it's about the connection to the ancestral soil, meaning it doesn't work. They've tried to have a Jewish state out in Eastern Siberia or down in Argentina or to offer us Uganda. And I absolutely think that the only way you can do it is in the ancestral soil. Having said that, not only are there additional peoples, ethnicities, religions in this area, there's that aspect that within Zionism, you want to acknowledge the other because you've been sidelined as a Jew and because of your need to have one country where being Jewish is a non-issue. You want to make that non-issue, I'm going to do a double negative of not being Jewish, that in Israel you also feel comfortable. And I think that on that one, we are more challenged as a country, and we are trying to face it, but that doesn't mean that we're still doing the best job we could.
Well, that's where I keep going back to the broader conversation, because I don't believe there's any job that's ever get complete, and I don't think there's perfection anywhere. But if you're having that conversation, you can continue to have that dialogue, but I agree 100%. If you're anti-Zionist, I'm going to put you the 99.9% you're anti-Jewish. Because
I agree.
Yeah, because you never can sort of have those discussions. It always goes back, as you're saying, it's a Jewish nation. It has complexities. It has a calendar. It has a look, but it's a Jewish nation. It's ancestral soil. And that is the part, is that if you're, and people want to try to divide between being anti-Jewish and anti-Israel, but there cannot be that division.
I'm Zoe, and I'm from Dream Israel, an incredible teen travel initiative at Jewish National Fund USA. Let me tell you what Dream Israel is. Through this initiative, any high school student can receive a grant of up to $7,500 to put towards their study abroad program in Israel with one of Jewish National Fund USA's academic partners. How do you earn this grant? All you need to do is fundraise for a Jewish National Fund USA philanthropic project in Israel.
Without this Dream Israel grant, I would not be able to be here in Israel.
Thank you, Dream Israel.
Thank you, Dream Israel.
Thank you, Dream Israel, for making my dreams come true.
Take the trip of your dreams with Dream Israel and Jewish National Fund USA.
America, or I'm going to use the diaspora, Israel, the Jewish and non-Jewish part, that conversation between knowing who we are and them knowing who they are. Do you think Israelis know America?
So I'm going to rephrase your question and say, I don't think that Israelis, not just Jews, know at all the American Jewish community. I don't think that they necessarily also know the United States of America or North America, but I am certain, Russell, as somebody who has grown up here, who is married an Israeli, who my entire family is very Israeli, and I live within this world, and my kids also, in that sense, who were born here and have grown up here and are serving here in the military. I have lots of cousins in the States, so that my direct connection with my relatives is one thing. But the average Israeli who grows up here, somebody who's in their 20s or 30s, and for that matter, and I love and adore my father and mother-in-law, but their knowledge of the North American Jewish community to me is so wrong. They do not see and understand the beauty, the diversity, the amazing pluralism of the North American Jewish community. I'll put it in the following terms. The bulk of Israelis who don't practice the religion, and there are a lot of them that practice the religion very slightly, they're still Jewish and they're talking Hebrew. And they live in this land and they know the history and the culture and the calendar because that's what they live in. That's like the amazing aspect of the Jewish state. But they don't practice the religion. The synagogue they're not going to is the Orthodox one. And when they come across the ideas of pluralism, let alone equality within the religious world, they're usually overwhelmed. And I wish that we had a much stronger connection and a much stronger bridge to show both sides of how Judaism in its pluralism developed in North America in an amazing way.
And being from the United States, your family in the United States today, do we know Israel and do we know the Jewish Israel?
So again, it's that there's a big challenge, and this isn't perhaps about Zionism and the creation of the state and that idea of a Jewish majority. Here it's about the Jewish aspect, do you support it or not, and the diversity within the Jewish world. I think, that's me, Miri, that Israel is way behind North America in discussing, entertaining, and understanding the pluralism and liberalism of Jewish world, meaning in Israel, the orthodoxy is still very, very strong. And that's not just, it's ultra-Orthodox and the Orthodox, modern Orthodoxy, that portions of it have become very, very conservative and strict. And I need to look for the synagogue that I would feel comfortable in North America and or invent one inside Israel. There are more voices in Israel now. There are lots of changes that are happening on the ground. They're happening in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv and in new communities. And people are looking, I mean, in the books behind me, you're not seeing the Jewish books, which you would have in most Jewish homes. You have the Israeli books. There's like this distinction between that Israeli history and the Jewish history. Israelis tend to be very patronizing to North American Jewishness. It personally drives me crazy. I did a bat mitzvah in Israel in 1974. Now you know my age, right? Okay, it's like a long time ago. So in 1974, girls didn't do bat mitzvahs. My daughter did a bat mitzvah when she was 12, which was already a few years ago, okay? But it was still the same parents going, girl doing a bat mitzvah. I'm talking about the Aliyah Torah full bat mitzvah in our style. And I very much felt that it was my North American background that enabled me to have that openness. And I need that as a bridge. I think my cousins know Israel very well, but it's always better when both communities are on equal footing and talk to each other. It's not about the North Americans, Jews, catering to Israel or Israel patronizing them. There's supposed to be a conversation, and each side brings very strong elements to the table.
Well, I think that's, it's so interesting. And one of the things that we're going to talk about beyond even this conversation is that these Zionist conversations that we began started about because of our building a village that we're putting together in Beersheba. It's a World Zionist Village. And the idea is it's not about buildings, it's about conversation. Because even in America, we built the mechitza between right and left and between religious and non-religious. And the world, we've done that. And I think the Israel diaspora relationship has to grow up after almost 75 years of Israel being a nation. It just has to grow to its next stage. That kind of conversation, you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree that a Reform temple is good or bad. You don't have to agree that a bat mitzvah is right or wrong. But to understand it and to at least understand what people are feeling and doing and having those conversations without The political piece is what we're trying to achieve as well. And the strategies and the thought process of people like you who've lived in both those worlds are so important to us.
One of the things that I find nowadays that in my conversations is that you try to facilitate acknowledgement. As you just said, it's not about agreeing, but if you can actually acknowledge the other, the most important part, Russell, is that we talk to each other face to face. And when I say face to face, I don't mind on Zoom. I live there, that's okay. But that we actually have a conversation where I'm looking you in your eyes, you're looking me in the eyes, where people already will have a different conversation. One of the biggest challenges for me today is that within the younger generation, and this is so difficult, they actually are experiencing a type of anti-Semitism, which is totally coming out of an erroneous, horrific depiction of the term Zionism, and that they're experiencing anti-Semitism in North America in a way that when we left, it wasn't like that. My parents didn't leave the United States because of anti-Semitism. And I feel that my younger generation, the kids of my cousins, are experiencing something which is coming out of that horrific, very wrong depiction of Zionism in the 2020s.
So I think education, and you're sitting in a school that has Americans that come to that university as well. And I think that you've probably had many of those conversations about where they came from, where they're going back to. The battlegrounds, as I said, it's not just nuclear Iran, and it's not the strategic alliances of the Abraham Accords or not. It's that we have to strengthen up our counter-terrorism to what is going on college campuses and in the high school world, where we've abandoned almost the education in American high school of Israel.
So first of all, you're absolutely right. It's always about education, isn't it? And when we talk about education, I very much believe in all levels at the same time. It's not just about people to people, one-on-one. It's about getting as many people in the room. It's about talking to them on Zoom. It's about being in social media. But the challenge that we do have today that we did not have until 15 years ago, or really more strongly in the last 10 years, is that we lack nuanced conversations. And I think that the biggest challenge of social media when it comes to like a term like Zionism is that I'm being told that I can't be Jewish, liberal, feminist, and a Zionist. And I say, you are so wrong. I am totally a Zionist, and I'm absolutely a Jewish, feminist, liberal mother. And I'm all of the above. And it has to do with the lack of understanding of what it means both to be a Zionist and how I view Zionism, in the sense that you can't have that nuanced conversation.
So Miri, I'm going to take you to the part about you now to close this, because I think it's so important as a leader, not only in the military, not only in political and academia, where your journey began. You make Aliyah. You're going to be going in. Look, I know that there's always a question about whether leadership is DNA or is it learned, But you make a decision. You're going to go to the IDF. You're a woman. You, let's face it, it is not an equal playing field. And you have to make that decision that you're going to put yourself out to be that leader. What was that decision-making process? What went through in your head? And then what was some of the pieces that you could tell others that they have to take when they want to be a leader?
When you feel that you are alone in the room, for whatever reason it is, it can be because you're different, you're a woman, all sorts of different reasons of being the only person in the room, that you don't feel that everybody is with you in your camaraderie. It's making conscious decisions of how you work within the room. Do I highlight being different? Sometimes that works for you. Do you work with the room one-on-one? I'm looking at you, I'm looking at the next person. I'm making sure that I have that personal contact to show it. But at the end, to me, it's about professionalism in what I do. I know what I'm good at, and I own that. I know how to talk. I know how to explain subjects. I know how to be within the intelligence world. I was very professional at what I did. I kind of put my different agendas outside the room. You take some harsh issues with that. You have to learn how to breathe in deep, decide when you're going to, break the system or not. And in my own way, I just did what I wanted to do by focusing, by being very professional. It's not just about being the best one in the room. You have to work the room. There are politics that go into it. Those who think that it's only about being the best, it doesn't work that way. You have to also know to engage with people, and to meander your way to where you want to go. I do think that when you put the star in the sky as where you want to go, you're going to get there. Okay? You're going to find people who support you, and you're going to take your steps one at a time.
So as a leader, we're constantly talking to young people and talking about leadership and climbing the ladder. And whenever I do a leadership training, if you're not ready to fall, off the ladder, don't start climbing it. And there's a loneliness to it. You talked about being the only one in the room sometimes, and full room, you are the only one in the room. And leadership, is it worth that?
My entire career, including in the Prime Minister's office, I was the only woman in the room. I didn't ignore it. I owned it. And I say that not only is it worth it, it's about your own aspirations. I want anybody out there now who is 20, 25, and is putting for themselves right now where they want to do professionally, personally, where they want to live, that you look at where you want to go, own it. As long as you're not hurting anybody, okay? Own where you want to go. And that sense of knowing where you want to go, of what you are going to do, is another aspect of leadership, together with having the capability to being alone, to believing in what you do, and to being very professional at what you do. Those are going to bring you to a place where not only are you going to do what you want to do, you're going to have others right behind you.
Miri, I got to tell you, you are a role model. You're a friend. You're anybody wants to know the most information going on about all of the issues that face Israel, security, Middle East, and challenges, and on Zionism leadership, go to Miri Eisin. And Miri, I want to thank you for being on ZTV.
Russell, I just want to say to all of your audience that I so am happy that I get the chance to talk to them to talk to you. I get to do more often. And let's hope that we meet on my side of the ocean or yours.
Deal. To watch this and all of our past episodes, go to ZTV, our Zionism Studios YouTube page, and subscribe to get notifications.